their charts of the short list will know who this is.
You know, Brian, people have their 1, 2, 3, 4 big screen TVs that I can see within my eyesight here. But really tonight, all eyes were focused up on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. I mean, that's where people were looking. And from our vantage point here, we've got a pretty clear shot. And I can tell you now, they all are going to focus now on what's called the Loggia of the Blessings, where we will first hear the French Cardinal Jean-Louis Touron will come out, and he will announce who the choice is for the new pope. He will explain, he will give his cardinal's name and then tell us what name he has chosen as pope. And then minutes afterwards, we will see the new pope.
Back up to George Weigel. George, the new pope traditionally, correct me if I'm wrong, speaks for a short time. This is not, however, used as any statement of policy, any statement of direction. It is a kind of a cursory thank you and blessing to the city and the church.
Brian, there's a couple of things that'll go on that loggia in a moment. I think the name itself will be something of an indication. The name can sum up a program. Giovanni Battista Montini called himself Paul VI because he wanted to begin to recapture that missionary fervor of the early church. John Paul I wanted to honor his two predecessors and indicate continuity. John Paul II wanted to, even a more urgent situation after the 33 days of John Paul I, signal continuity. So the name itself will tell us something about where this Pope intends to lead the Church of the 21st century. The habit of giving a little statement, a greeting to the people of Rome, for after all, he is their new bishop, and they will be here in their hundreds of thousands, began with John Paul II. Previously, the Pope would come out. There's a ritual formula for the first papal blessing of the city and the world. But John Paul II, knowing how traumatized really people were by the sudden death of John Paul I, and how stunned the Romans would be by the fact that he was the first non-Italian in 455 years, said a bit about himself, asked them to correct his Italian when he made a mistake, and won the hearts and minds of the Romans in the first 10 minutes of his pontificate before bestowing his first blessing as Pope.
George Weigel, who has studied and written about the Catholic Church and popes for decades upon decades, part of our team at the Vatican. For the viewers domestically just joining us, perhaps having just heard of the white smoke above the Sistine Chapel, it is indeed true. The bells have been ringing, the people flooding into the square, awaiting what can be any time now, because precedent doesn't always hold true in these cases, awaiting the announcement, the first sight of the man who will be the new Pope. We're going to pause just a moment here as some of our stations break away to go back to normal programming until such time as we know the identity of the new Pope. We are back, and that is a live picture of the Vatican. To the right and up the hill a bit, the white smoke has started to fade, but it was unmistakable and clear and visible to all who had gathered. 2:06 p.m. East Coast time. We looked at the chimney. We'd, to be honest, been staring at it all morning. It started off as gray. That is usually explained away by the initial burning of the ballots written in secret but read aloud during the ceremony. Then the chemicals added to make the smoke unmistakably white. We've been through several other votes, and we'd seen the billowing black smoke. There was no mistake about this one. Lester Holt heading up our team over there at the Vatican. And Lester, we rely on experts like George Weigel to guide us on this. It was just thought to be impossible all of our lifetimes to even discuss an American pope. You mentioned this a few minutes ago. We should go through at least the possibilities, the men who are on the list, should the seemingly impossible take place today.
Well, I mean, think about it. Even the men who have been talked about as perhaps the potential American popes discounted it. Timothy Dolan of New York told Savannah Guthrie on our air that when asked about thoughts of becoming perhaps the next pope, he said, I've got about the same chance as taking A-Rod's place on third base for the New York Yankees. Now, he may be right, but we'll certainly find out here in the next several minutes. But I think it took all of us by surprise that over the last week, suddenly his name, Cardinal O'Malley of Boston, names suddenly that were put out there from folks who have some knowledge of all this, that they could be serious contenders. Could we see a North American pope? I think you would see a reaction perhaps beyond what you're witnessing right now if that were to occur. We will all find out. We have all gone down these lists of front runners. There's been so much speculation by folks who are in the know, and then a lot of us who simply aren't, as we try to game all this. But of course, this was a secretive process known to the 115 cardinals who met in the Sistine Chapel, perhaps had discussions over dinner last night, more discussions over lunch. When it got down to the voting, however, each filling out a name on a ballot. They took 2 ballots this morning, and they have apparently taken 2 tonight. A total of 5 ballots. That's takes us longer in terms of the voting than it did to elect Cardinal Ratzinger as Pope Benedict XVI. We'll find out more about this process as we go along, but right now the crowd simmering down a bit. The rain has stopped, interestingly enough. It's been a miserable night here. It's still very cool, but the rain stopped shortly before the smoke appeared. Everyone's been looking for signs. One of the signs we should note, and it's getting all kinds of traction on social media, Brian, was a seagull that kind of camped the afternoon on top of the chimney. And that opened up a lot of funny comments, some people finding it as a sign of God, others making their own assessments of it. But that distracted the crowd for a lot of the day. Now you hear people chanting and sending out their tweets and messages. And speaking of tweets, a lot's changed since we saw the election of the last pope. Vatican now has an iPhone app, which I've given up hope on right now because there is so much internet traffic and phone traffic that you can barely get a message out right now. But just another example of how things have changed in this era of instant communication. Yet at the end of the day, we're all looking at a pipe and watching smoke. From the morning session, there were 2 votes, and there was smoke, and it was like a deja vu from 8 years ago as we all sit here thinking, kind of looks black, could be white, but it was, of course, black. But tonight, unambiguous, as we saw that white smoke billowing from the top of the Sistine Chapel, punctuated by the shouts of the thousands, tens of thousands who have gathered here now, and then, of course, the ringing of the bells. No more stirring sight, I think, than what we have witnessed here tonight.
It is a beautiful shot we're looking at now, and let's hope for the benefit of all gathered that what we've been told is a clearing trend for the weather in Rome chooses tonight to arrive. What a stunning, stunning sight. One of the great traditions in all of organized religion. George Weigel, we don't want this to delve into the daily racing form, and you've been so kind to us and so spot on in your reporting. But I'd love a last-minute gut check from you, since we are watching here with an American audience 5 hours behind you. I would love to know what you think the real chance is of A, a North American pope, and B, an American pope being named.
I think the chances are very good, Brian. In addition to Cardinal Dolan and Cardinal O'Malley, whom Lester mentioned a moment ago, Cardinal Marc Ouellet, the former Archbishop of Quebec, has been a prominently mentioned possibility. This may indicate that the Cardinals want to move the papacy, if you will, to the Western Hemisphere, to give the Church a more global look in the future. Were it to be an American, which I think is not at all impossible, it would be a sign of recognition that there is immense vitality in the church in the United States, which has had a tough patch for a while here. But this coming Easter, well over 100,000 people will enter the Catholic Church, which is a sign of real growth, real possibility. I think there's also a sense that we're at a hinge moment in the history of the Catholic Church, that the Church has to rediscover its missionary fervor, and that we need, the cardinals are perhaps saying, a pope who can put a face on that new dynamic orthodoxy that will lead the Church through the 21st century.
And George, as you've been talking, part of the great pomp and tradition of this, the entrance of the band and the guards, all of it lending excitement to this moment. George, to continue your last point, there is such a sense of moment because of the ongoing crisis in this church, felt admittedly by Americans more so than a lot of other branches of the church, a lot of other people around the world. You also mentioned the sense of moment when John Paul II was named.
Right.
Where does this rank in terms of kind of importance, an important era for the church going forward?
I think, Brian, we really are at a hinge moment here. From the beginning of the pontificate of Benedict XVI, it was known that something would be different about his successor. Namely, that successor would not have attended the Second Vatican Council. He would be a pope entirely formed in the turbulence and possibility and sorrow of post-conciliar Catholicism. And so we are at a genuine generational shift moment in the history of the Catholic Church, and I suspect we are going to see a pope emerge on that loggia within the next half hour or so, who embodies that generational transformation, who has absorbed, if you will, the Second Vatican Council, the pontificates of John Paul II and Benedict XVI, and who will represent in his own person a generational shift into the future of the Catholic Church in the 21st century and beyond.
An almost Hollywood cinematic scene playing out there as you see the entire complex bathed in light. The guards, the honor guard, the papal flag foremost as they march behind the band, taking up their positions on the plaza. George Weigel will help us out with the local Italian names for all the terms we use, and beginning with loggia, the area where we will see the large double doors open, the curtains swing back. It too pre-lit, pre-wired for the new pope to come forward and talk about a roar regardless of the identity of the new pope. It will be a great, explosive, thrilling moment for the people who have been waiting on the plaza. And Lester, that roar just kind of fills the stone canyon of that part of Rome.
Brian, it is amazing to hear the sound as from our location here, perhaps a quarter of a mile and up, to hear the crowd as they saw the Swiss guards, the band. We should note, Brian, this has been a tough time for Italians who have had an election that was inconclusive, no government, then no pope. This is a welcome distraction for a country going through a tough recession, high unemployment, businesses closing. And this has brought a new focus, especially here in Rome, of course, the energy, the excitement, and you saw it in the streets building all day long. This morning we saw it, certainly, as people crowded the square, and then this afternoon as they continue to pour in here waiting for this moment. And the pageantry is just unbelievable. Now all eyes locked on that papal balcony and the scarlet draping, waiting to find out who the new pope is and whether this pope will be a surprise, not only in name, but perhaps a geographic surprise.
for folks just joining us, we have a graphic